This episode's guest is someone who proves that your past doesn't determine your destination. Asha Agarwal is somebody who went from sleeping on a used mattress in a council flat to building a 6-figure award-winning property consultancy and a 7-figure portfolio. But this isn't just a rags to riches story. It's a story of how trauma can become your greatest teacher and how pain can fuel your purpose. Asha has delivered over £40 million of development projects, with 85% sold off plan, contributed to £3 billion of property sales, and built an award-winning property consultancy with a 95% customer satisfaction rate. This episode goes beyond the numbers. We're diving into the mindset, the mission, and the moments that shaped her. This is for anyone who's ever doubted their path or wondered if it's too late to start over. Asha's story is proof that you write your future, and you get to do that on your own terms. So today we've got a really special guest, Asha Agarwal. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So we met at the Resi Awards, what was that, about a month ago now? Something like that? Yeah. And we just happened to be sitting next to each other.
Coincidence.
And we got chatting because we're there, we're talking about property. It's a networking thing. And you told me a very personal and inspiring story about your journey in and through property, where you are now and the aspirations you have for the future. And it really struck me as, because most people have got some kind of story within property and they will try and beef it up. They will try and make it sound like they've come from, let's use the word nothing. But actually in the story and what you've been telling us, it's been absolutely incredible to hear about your journey and where you've got to. So first of all, let's talk about your early years, if that's okay. One of the first things that I remember from the story that you were telling was about seeing your uncle at 10 years old getting beaten up, and you witnessed that, right? Do you want to tell us about that?
So obviously I grew up in a really rough council estate where violence was kind of like an everyday sighting. 10 years old, me and my uncle went for a walk. I don't remember where we went actually. And I remember we were back in my parents' block of flats, which was a rough council block. And he was held at knife point and was mugged for £20 cash. And I remember literally managed to run away and knocked on my mum's door. They've come out, and then he's obviously got away. The next day I had to get up and go school on my own. But that was really
to walk through the same area, the same thing.
It was like literally that was what it was. Life was like. My parents had been mugged more than once. So I think that fear, being fearless, was installed in me from young. That I had to deal with that and see things growing up from a very young age.
And that's what your story sort of, that theme goes through your entire story, that mindset that you've had. And that's what, I'm really interested in mindset. I find it absolutely fascinating how people can come from a similar background and have completely different ways of looking at the world and motivating themselves. And all the way through your story, that mindset and that strength that you've shown has been incredible. And that's obviously had a big part, and we're going to explore that a little bit more, is how much of a part that's played in the success that you've had. Looking back at those early years and developing that mindset, were you aware that was already happening, or was that sort of strength just subconsciously being instilled in you?
Knew no different. So I think once you've been at the bottom, there's nowhere, you can't go back to bottom because you've been at the bottom. So all you know is to fight. All you know is to work hard and fight for a better life, because you don't want to be going back to that life. So for me, I didn't know it was mindset until I've got older, and you start watching YouTube, start listening to audible books, so you realise, oh my God, it's the mindset.
Yeah.
But for me, I knew no different. To me, it was the person I was. It was what I had to do. I didn't learn it. It wasn't installed in me. I had no other option.
So a full write-out of your story we're going to include that people can read so they can see what we're referring to. And we'll take snippets out and we'll sort of explain what those snippets are, so that even if you're not going to read the entire story, you can see. Yeah. Then at 14, you experienced an assault and were excluded from school because of how others treated you afterwards. In that moment, what kept you going? Like, you were the one that was punished for something that wasn't instigated by you. How did you deal with that?
So at 14, so obviously I'm a survivor of statutory rape by 2 teenage boys on a council estate block. Next day, girls obviously at school would find out, and they started like picking on me, calling me names, and I would defend myself and end up getting into fights with girls, and I ended up getting suspended 9 times from my first secondary school because of it, because regardless of me self-defence, I obviously was fighting. So obviously it was tough because obviously I grew up in an Asian household where obviously my family had a lot of morals and principles, but they raised me in a very Western area. So it was all kind of a Western society, and I grew up very Westernized. So because of that, I then got excluded from my first secondary school. And then my parents looked at a centre, and there was one secondary school that would take me on. So I then went to this secondary school, and it was different. I then had to find myself. I then had to it was literally at year 10, so in between my GCSEs. So I had to literally figure out life again. And also growing up, I didn't grow up in a traditional household where my parents were able to help me educational wise. So English was a second language in my household. My parents weren't UK born, so they weren't born in the UK. They didn't quite have the English skill set. So I had to then do my schooling, do my homework, figure out education, everything on my own, because I didn't get that support at home because my parents weren't in that position to give me that support. They were still learning English themselves.
So you didn't have the support from your parents in education. You didn't really have the support from the education system either, because that was trying to punish you for things that were out of your control. But what's really interesting is that hasn't in any way dampened your perspective on growth. And as a person, you can see that you've got this, you want to be at a certain place, and you know that you've got to become you've got to grow as a person in order to get there. And you've done that fiercely, but education hasn't supported you.
No. At 17, I then managed to get a flat from the council, but I had to get it on licence because I was underage. And then, so then obviously I've had my flat, which was nice. It was my space. But when I got the keys to the flat, I had no money. So literally, I've gone to the council local office. They've said to me, we're going to give you this flat. Here are the keys. I didn't have the option even to go and look at it or nothing. It was just like,
oh really?
It. Yeah, it was a different way, because obviously went from a hostel, they want you at the hostel.
Yeah.
Giving me this flat, this location. She said, go and look at, take the keys to this flat, but we need to sign a licence because you're underage. After 18, your name will be on there. Bear in mind, I didn't know none of this. I'm 17. I didn't know what a licence meant. I didn't know, but I've just signed it. And then I remember going to this flat, and these are the times, didn't have carpet, it was concrete floor, and I had no money. So me and my best friend at the time, so she's come with me, and I was like, oh my God, I've got a flat. And then but I had no money. And then we found a used mattress on the estate, and me and her carried that used mattress back to my new flat, and that's what I slept on for a month.
Put that on the concrete floor?
Put it on a concrete floor, and I slept on that used mattress for a month until I had money to buy a bed, get wooden flooring, to actually slowly do up my apartment.
Do you consider that your starting point? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's where, right, I'm on my own now. I am responsible for everything that goes on in my life.
There was no mum
and I'm going to,
There was no mum and dad. I remember my mum, my dad was still paying my phone bill and had my flat. My mum didn't know. I was a daddy's girl. And when my mum did find out 6 months later, she was like, right, do you take that
really
out of her thing? Because the way my mum saw it, you left. I didn't ask you to leave. I didn't want you to leave home. You made that decision to leave home, so you now go and figure it out. That was not what I wanted for you.
This is the part that I find so interesting, because I mean, and so inspirational, because a lot of people will say, well, I came from nothing, or but actually when you look back at it, they had something. They had support. They had support from somebody else, who was going to make sure that they were okay. But literally, the point that we're starting at right now with that flat is you've got concrete floors and you've got a mattress that you found on the estate, and that's where all of this has been built from, which we're going to get to in just a little while. So we'll start talking about some of the exciting achievements that you've had. And was it all sort of upwards and positive from then? So you take responsibility for it, or what else was going on?
Place, and then I ended up getting in a relationship with the wrong person, and I ended up being in a really physical, mentally and abusive relationship, and I felt stuck. So what became like my own place, buying my own bed, building up my place, now become hell. It was an abusive relationship. I've got stitches in my head. I've got a chipped front tooth that I can't get rid of. The scars were really, I couldn't get rid of him, and it was really tough, but I had to get up and go work every day still. I had to pay the bills. So for me, that made me stronger. And I meet women all the time that go through it, and literally it's domestic violence, especially after COVID, was a real big thing. So now I'm really a cheerleader for women that literally stand for themselves and don't need to. You be strong. You don't need to be putting up with that anymore.
And was it around that time that you got into property for the first time from a professional capacity?
So how my property journey started is very interesting. So my dad worked in banking, so that's kind of
why you went into banking as well. Yeah, right, okay.
And his brothers and his dads were senior bank managers in State Bank of India in India. So banking. So when I got my banking job, my dad was proud.
Right.
Obviously I was following the family route, but retail banking doesn't pay well.
Yeah.
So again, I wanted a luxurious lifestyle. So this was not going to give me what I wanted, which I knew. So one day, one of my friends, he was like, oh, I should follow me to the petrol station. I said, oh, I'll come with a drive. Anyway, so while he was filling up petrol, I've gone into BP petrol station and picked up the South London Press. Because bearing in mind, there was no internet, no social media. So I was waiting there looking at the South London Press, and I was looking at the job section.
Yeah.
And there was a job at London and Quadrant Housing. It was called Tower Homes at the time. And it was for a resales and staircasing officer. But they talked about mortgages. So I'm like, oh my God, I work in a bank. And while I was in the banking, I paid to do CMAP qualification myself.
Right.
Because again, I was just a cashier, and I knew that I needed to work harder, but there wasn't an opportunity for me to be a mortgage advisor. So I then obviously...
So just explain what CMAP is to some people that might not understand.
So CMAP is a mortgage qualification that allows you to be a mortgage broker. Mm-hmm. So for me as a cashier, the next step was now to be a mortgage broker in order to make money. Everything was driven by money. I needed money. That's what all I know. I just wanted more money. So I paid for CMAP myself to do the qualification, but then saw this job in South London Press, and I applied for this job and got an interview. Bearing in mind, no one helped me get the application. There was no Google, there was no internet. I just done a random application, with no education. So I then went to this interview. I done a great interview. I was like, oh my God, I've done a great interview. They love me. Went back to my cashier job that day. Next day, got a call. I didn't get the job. So I was gutted. I thought, oh my God, this was like double the money I was earning. And I thought this was the way out. I thought, yes. Anyway, so had to cracked on with my cashier job in the bank.
What did you think though when you didn't get that job, right? When you've got so much riding on it,
yeah.
When you've got so much hope for the future, and you didn't get that job, did you revert back to that old mindset that you had of just like, right, I know that's what I want. All right, it hasn't happened this time. I'm going to get it next time.
No, like when I look back, like I said, I didn't have that mindset. I didn't know what mindset was. I just had to work. I had bills to pay. So at this age, I'm 19 now, and I thought, just went back to my day-to-day job, and maybe another job will come up. I didn't know how I was going to navigate career changes, how I was going to climb. So I continued my CMAP qualification, and thought maybe one day they'll give me a mortgage advisor job, so then I can make a bit more money and get a bit more commission. But a spanner in it. 5 days later, they've called me back. They said to me that the team really loved you, really liked your energy, and they've created another position for you because that role went to someone internally. So literally...
It's a bit mean to leave it 5 days, isn't it?
Yeah. 5 days. Oh, I'm happy. It could have been 2 weeks. I'm grateful. That was the starting of my career. That is how I got into property. So again, for me, every bit of my journey, God has always put people or circumstances in front of me that's allowed me to navigate the next chapter of my life. So early on in my career, I didn't know what I wanted. All I knew was I wanted a luxurious lifestyle. I wanted better. I didn't know what better was. I didn't have a goal. I remember days, literally, like there'll be times that I'd walk back from work and I'd be crying on the inside because I'd just be thinking, I want more, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
I wasn't well spoken. I didn't have like I said, English wasn't like growing up as my first language. I just knew that I aspired for more, but I just didn't know how. I didn't have any support around me. I mean, I had friends, but my friends were similar to me, similar paths as me. There was no key influential person in my life that helped me. So God's always kind of created a path. So had I not been at a South London, looking at a South London press, I wouldn't have applied for this job. And what God did is he then put me into the property world, and that's the world I'm in now. And I absolutely love what I do. And to wake up every day and enjoy what you do, that's a blessing.
So did you enjoy that first job that you had within property as well, that mortgage advisor job? How did that go?
So that was in a banking, so I didn't end up doing that.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so that was in banking. So when I went into property, so I started at L&Q, London and Quadrant Housing, and I was a resales and staircasing officer.
What does that mean?
It means, so when you buy a shared ownership home, like by part rent, if you want to buy more shares in a property, it's called staircasing.
Yeah.
If you want to sell your home, there's normally an 8 weeks nomination where the provider will then find another buyer to buy it as on a shared ownership. So Tower Homes was a provider that specialised in shared ownership homes. They were a subsidiary of London and Quadrant Housing. So the team that I worked in specialised in dealing with the aftercare side of the buyers. So dealing with anyone that wanted to buy more shares, that wanted to sell their home, that wanted to get a further advance on their property. They needed permission. So that's the team I went into. So it was like literally when I started now, I didn't know how to use a computer or internet. So remember, bearing in mind I was a cashier. So it was just a system. It was just counting money. I was very quick at counting money. I didn't have to write a letter. I didn't have to use the internet. It was literally just count money, put it into someone's bank account, maybe open an account for someone. That's all I did. So when I've now got in this job, I had to write letters. I didn't even know how to write a letter. I had to learn the internet because I had to Google like house prices and stuff like that. I didn't know what Rightmove was. So now I've got this job. So I've got this job because obviously I talked a lot about my CMAP as a trainee mortgage advisor, but I really wasn't. So what's interesting is every single job that I've got, have you heard of that saying, fake it till you make it?
Of course.
So every interview I've been to, I've kind of like exaggerated what I do. And I've got the job. So really, I've kind of lied my way up. But what I did have is when I got that role, I worked goddamn hard in every single role. So every role I got, I deserved that role and they appreciated me. But it wasn't easy getting that role when I got that role. So when I was at London Quadrant, it was like, how do I write a letter? How do I do this? And it was really challenging. And I do feel like I was mocked for it. I do feel like I was kind of laughed at and picked at.
Because you asked your colleagues about it?
Yeah, and it was kind of...
Or they were judging the ones that you were writing where...
Yeah, so that's what it was. And I'd go home in tears every day. But again, I couldn't go back to the banking job, even though I was happy there, because it didn't pay enough.
Yeah.
And I needed the money.
So how did you deal with that?
I literally would get up and go to work every day, and I learned.
So you got on with it?
I got on with it.
Basically.
And I learned, and I asked questions, and I learned. And I remember the CEO at the time saying to a manager of mine, how would you manage someone like me? Because I was quite difficult. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't the most well-spoken. I most really didn't have that whole can-do attitude. I wasn't moulded right in how they were because I was different. My upbringing was different. But what I did have is I had that resilience to just keep going because I needed the money. And then again, an opportunity came. So there was an opportunity in another department, maybe a year later, a maternity cover. This was in the sales team. So then I obviously applied for this role. I had to do an interview, even though it was internal. I got this role, so it was a 6 months maternity cover as a sales consultant, and oh my God, that's where I found myself. So that's what I'm in now. I work in sales, but had that opportunity not come, I wouldn't be working in sales and marketing. And it became clear that evident that I was very good at sales. So I would literally go in and sell these homes to these first-time buyers. I understood the process. The team were lovely. I just was happy again, and I enjoyed coming to work.
Why do you think sales lights your fire so much?
I think I'm an enthusiastic person. I have a personality. I think to be in sales, you've got to have a personality, and I'm quite competitive. So I think it naturally was my right fit. And I think, yeah, I found myself in that role, and I became more confident because then I would go out and do viewings on my own. I would then get a deal done. And you know, the best part was, because obviously I've always worked in helping first-time buyers on a property ladder. So they say in life, you have your 3 key milestones: buying your home, buying your first home, having a baby, and getting married. So I am quite fortunate to work in a field that is literally helping first-time buyers get onto the property ladder. It's inspiring. So for me, when I then went into property sales, it was like to help a first-time buyer get on that property ladder. When you hand over that key, I mean, sometimes you're literally handing over key to a couple that are living separately. So for them to be moving in their home together to start a family, or you're helping like a woman that's literally leaving a domestic abusive relationship, and then she's got her key. It's just like the stories and the buyers you meet is so inspirational. That day when you hand that key to someone, meeting them at their property in their new home, it's nice. It's a great feeling.
Absolutely. Was it in sales then that you got your first sort of win in property that made you think, this is me, this is what I want to do, this is right?
I mean, life threw challenges again. So I was working at London Quadrant for 6 years. Then became a senior sales consultant. So then obviously was really doing well, hitting my sales target every month. I then got made redundant. So I then went off to have a baby, came back when she was 7 months, and I got made redundant. So I'd thought my whole life had ended, like literally, like I remember in the office crying my eyes out.
Yeah.
Because bearing in mind, as a mum, you have mum guilt. So going back to work when she was 7 months, I had big mum guilt, but I needed to do it financially. But not only that, I needed me back. I wanted to build back my confidence. So being at home, raising a baby as a woman, you lose your confidence. So for me, it was going back into a workplace, surrounding people, not having a baby brain. And then literally a week being back, I got told I'm being made redundant. So literally, I remember in the office crying my eyes out, thought my life was over. But again, I knew no different. I had to fight. I had to get another job because at this stage now I had a mortgage. So I now had even more responsible bills. It wasn't rent I was paying a mortgage. So I then applied for another job, but I stayed in sales. So I worked for another housing association and stayed in sales. And I think that's where my niche was. That's where my strength was.
So how did you get from that position there where you'd been made redundant up to being a director level?
So again, like I said, I've always go back to God. God always has created the opportunities and put people in the path for me to get to that next stage. So when I've left L&Q after being made redundant, a job come up at Notting Hill Housing, and it was a sales role. I went into this role and it became quite evident that I was very experienced compared to the other sales consultants that were there. And I naturally went into a private sales manager role. So I didn't have the title, but I then managed their whole private sale portfolio. So what that entailed, managing the agents, setting up the show home, setting up the marketing skills. And then I was there for 6 months. A role came up at Hyde Housing, but it was a sales manager job. I'd never been a manager. Okay, I knew I could do this role. I knew I could be a manager. I knew I could deliver sales. I knew I'd be a great manager. Went to this interview. So obviously I kind of fake it till you make it, made out of like a manager, doing the private sales. They loved me at the interview. They then called me back for a second interview. They said, we've got to go for an assessment centre. I got the role. I remember I started the role, and the first few days, my manager at the time, who I'm really quite close with now, she said to me, I need to do reviews and appraisal time. And I was like, how do I do a review? And she was like, oh, but you got this role because obviously we wanted someone experienced, like we thought you'd done this. And I was like, yeah, I know. I literally figured it out, and I was there for 7 years, and I grew the team from 2 members of staff down to 7 members of staff when I left. So again, like, I've literally worked hard. I've proved myself in every role. And then...
So that's a sales manager role at that point?
Yep.
With Hyde?
Yep, with Hyde. And 7 years now. So my daughter's getting older. I've now hit every target. I was kind of managing my manager upwards. Like, so I was managing upwards. And then a recruitment agency called me one day. And they had this position at an estate agent. I was like, no. No, I never wanted to work in a estate agent. I was never a cutthroat person. I was always kind of like, just liked what I do, wanted to be a nice person, wanted to just get the job done. So I said no. Then I spoke to I had 2 heads of sales there, and I said to them, oh, this company called me. So one of them said to me, Asha, I think you should consider it. I'm like, what do you mean? She said, we're not going anywhere and you're more than capable of doing this job. And I said, what? She goes, no, I don't want to see you go. But she goes, we're not going anywhere. So that is the next opportunity for you. So the agent, now it was called Corals. So Corals was the agent. So I met with the owner, and I remember she said to the recruitment agency that she has never ever in her whole time had lunch and had felt so comfortable having pizza with someone. That was her feedback. So I got the job.
That's good feedback.
Yeah. But the interesting bit was, this is where this gets interesting. So I started 2 weeks into being in this role. So this was heading up their shared ownership department. Savills took over. So that's how I ended up at Savills. So I literally then became a director at Savills, heading up their whole shared ownership department. So I wasn't prepped. I wasn't like, it was just literally thrown in. I was at Margaret Street, had to build a team, had to go out and get clients and literally grow the business I've never done networking. So it goes back to a conversation that we had earlier about networking. And I was like, how do you network? I don't know these people. People just knew of me, but no one really knew me. I didn't go out. I very kept my world separate. So my friends and my personal life was very separate to my work life.
Yeah.
I never mixed the two. So for me, it was like, I've got no friends in this industry. What do I do? So I had to go out. I had to learn. And what was quite nice is that there's so much people along the path that have helped me. And it's really nice. There's so much people that want to see me win. And that's the bit that has really helped me, that they just believe in me. And it's just nice to know that so much people want me to win. And it's just a nice feeling that they've supported me on my journey. But I was at Sales for 2.5 years, had to kind of figure it out, grow the team, built a relationship with everyone.
Where are you currently? Corporate life.
Yeah.
Made it up to director of Savills. Where are you now?
So obviously, so when I was at Savills, an opportunity come to me to work as a consultant. So the person said to me, you have to come as a consultant. I can't give you a PAYE job because the budget won't allow it. Consultant? I thought, no way. Like, I've only ever known fixed pay slip every month, pay my mortgage, pay my bills. That's all I ever knew. And it was obviously more money. But I was like, no. But then I thought, what have I got to lose? This is a great opportunity. But I think what stopped me at first was, like, I always saw consultants as older people that were more at their retired stage, that wanted to do 1 or 2 days work just to bring in their skill sets. And I don't think I know any consultant in the property field that's young.
Yeah.
But anyway, as I do, I took the risk, and I went into that role. Ends up being in that role as a consultant on a day's rate for 3.5 years, and literally set up a sales brand, set up an in-house team, won them awards, and literally everything flew. So I then obviously realised the power of branding. So when I started up, a lot of consultants, they have their name as consultancy. Yeah. So when I first started, when I had to literally set up this limited company, which I didn't even know how to do, had to go on Google, because again, I didn't know. I was never an entrepreneur. I never ever thought about owning a business. I never done business study at school. So I had to set up a limited company. I had to figure out accountant. Didn't see this as a long-term strategy. I thought, I'll do this 6 months. I'll then go and find another job. So I set up AA Property Consultancy. That's what I was called. Then 6 months into it, I thought, I'm enjoying this. And I was getting other work through. I was getting approached by other providers. Yeah. So then I obviously invested in branding. That's how the Inspire New Homes brand come. Right. So I didn't want to position myself as an independent consultant. I wanted to have kind of a brand behind me. And why I went with the name Inspire, so my skill set and expertise was always, my passion was always helping first-time buyers. So Inspire is kind of what they inspire to own their property. but also my skill set was working with the smaller organisations that didn't have the expertise, have that in-house sales team. So where I would come in, my services would be going in, either recruiting their sales team, managing the agents, basically helping them mitigate their risk of unsold homes. So how reviewing their sales and marketing procedures, making sure that their new homes were sold.
And what did you see as, when you've changed over to Inspire New Homes, what did you see as the destination of that? Did you have any idea, or did you just think, well, if I change it to Inspire, then it's gonna open up to a wider audience, and that was it?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Right.
I did it, like, again, everything. I've never had this big goal. Like, I knew I wanted more, but I never knew what the end product was. So when Inspire New Homes came about, I then got local authorities contacted me, so I've never had to pitch for any work.
Yeah.
It's all been word of mouth, been recommendation, or through LinkedIn. And I then, obviously, everything was under the Inspire Homes brand. And then I started doing work with this PR company, and they started submitting me for an awards. So I was like, me for an award? So last year I got shortlisted made a finalist for Women in Housing, Independent Women in Housing Award, and also got shortlisted for Most Inspiring Women in Property Award. And these were massive milestone moments for me, because, like, I didn't think I'd ever get to a place like this. So now I was building my own brand, building my own kind of recognition within the work that I've done. And what the Inspire New Homes brand did, it then became a company, if that made sense. Even though it was a one-man brand, I feel like the brand's bigger than what it is. So that was the interesting part, how much having a brand is so important.
In terms of mindset for those people, what do you think is if you could teach your next mentoring client one thing, what would be the most important thing that you would teach them?
Be clear in what you want, what it is you want. So like I said, I never really had that vision. I didn't quite understand what it was. But for me, it's about being clear in what direction you want to go. So something someone said to me at a very young age is stick in the one field. So basically, someone that changed jobs into different sectors would always still stay at the bottom. Where someone told me this at the age of 19, stay in one sector, one field, and climb that. So when I went into sales at 19, that's what I stayed at. So instead of having to go into, I don't know, work in law, work in another field, I stayed in property sales, hence why I was able to climb that corporate ladder. So again, that was very useful advice that someone said to me at 19 years old.
Looking at your entire journey, what's the most important lesson about resilience that you'd want other people to learn?
I mean, my one's always been never give up, but for me, it's kind of like, just know your worth, own your confidence. Like, know your worth. For me, I've had loads of knockbacks. I've had, like I said, I didn't think I'd be in rooms that I'm in rooms now. I remember, like, working at Hyde, and there would be, like, people at the sector that would come and meet with my size director, and these same people I'm friends with now, we'll WhatsApp each other, we'll talk, like, we share tips. I'm like, oh, I've got this today, what do you reckon? Like, these have become my friends. But I didn't think that these people would ever be my friends, because a lot of them are older than me, almost with the age of their kids. And like I said, I didn't really have that knowledge. But what I did have is I wanted to learn. I wanted to be better. So, just know your worth and know that you can do this. If you risk what you really want, just don't give up.
What's next for Inspire New Homes?
What's next for Inspire New Homes? So I've built Inspire New Homes into an award-winning consultancy. But what I've realised is the real legacy that I want to leave is to helping others build not just homes, but to build a career, build confidence, and change their way of life. And that's why now I want to expand Inspire New Homes to offer training. I haven't figured out yet, but a training academy, coaching, more one-to-one mentoring, especially for women and underrepresented talent in the property sector. So I'd love to hear from, like, house builders, housing associations, and property firms who'd want to partner on this journey to help create more exclusive workplaces and develop the next generation of leaders. So together, I just feel like we can do more than just build homes. We can actually build a foundation and change lives.
And again, that conversation is best to have through LinkedIn, through connecting on there. And
so you can follow Inspire New Homes, Instagram. You can contact me on LinkedIn, or you can find me on my website, inspirenewhomes.co.uk.
And you know, when I asked you before about when you had the concrete floor and when you had the mattress and what you wanted out of life, and at that point you didn't know what that was, right? You couldn't put your finger on it, but you knew your worth.
Yes.
At that point you knew your worth, and you knew that wasn't being represented by your environment at that time, and therefore you wanted a better environment, right? And that totally makes sense now. If you could sit with that 10-year-old girl, what would you tell her about what was coming?
That 10-year-old girl that was literally having to witness her uncle being held at knife point. There's a light, girl. There's a light at the end. Like, this is not going to be your way of life. I mean, I live in an area where that doesn't happen now. My daughter can go to the shop and I'm not worried about like what's going to happen to her. And I never thought I'd even be living in an area like that. And so there is a light, and I will get out of the ghetto.
It's a great message. For anybody that's listening who's going through a difficult stage in their lives, what's the message that you'd like to give to them?
Keep going, keep pushing. Some people give up because it's hard. Some people choose to continue because it's hard. So just continue, because it gets easier.
Amazing. Asha, thank you very much for being with us today. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for your story. Links to connect with Asha are going to be in our show notes, so follow them there. But thanks very much for your time.
You've had me.
If Asha's journey has inspired you as much as it has us, then follow her journey and tap into her insights on social media. All of her social profiles will be in the description. And if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow and subscribe for more powerful conversations just like this one.